Okay, hello everyone. My name is Bradley Bistritz.
And I'm J.D. Coleman.
And today we're going to have a very interesting presentation because we're going to have two polar opposites at the same time. We're going to go from the center of creation and art, and we are going to go from one direction to modern art and modern techniques, and we're going to go back down to hand art and sort of the sadly dying art of handwritten beauty. So I'm going to start today, and I'm going to talk about Adobe programs, the essential and basically industrial standard for most artists that are getting their grip into the world. And we're going to first start with this magnificent beast, Adobe Photoshop, one of the most intimidating names in the Adobe library. So the abilities of Adobe Photoshop are photo manipulation, image creation, and compression and formatting. Now, Photoshop, as the name states, is meant for photos. You take the photo with your camera, DSLR, however format, you extract the RAW or JPEG from that camera, and you can throw it into Photoshop. You could smear the face and make me look like an elephant if you wanted to. It's been done. It's a true example. And or you can just simply tone up a face. Let's say I have a blemish on my forehead, or some photographer would edit out all the images, like if you had a yearbook. Bless you. If you had a yearbook photo, you would pay like $10 for the blemish removal thing. That's what they do in Photoshop with the cloning tool. Now, the downsides with Photoshop are that it works in raster. Now, what raster is, raster means a grid or scanning, which means you'll have the entire photo becomes a grid, and you can work pixel by pixel. So I could zoom in all the way to about there and change that pixel to red and only that pixel. And that's genuine to Photoshop. Most of the Adobe suite cannot do that. Now the downside to that is that when this image gets enlarged, like this is the normal size of the Photoshop logo right here, it gets stretched out, it becomes pixelated. It's like if you took a piece of silly putty and you kept on stretching it out, eventually it's just useless. You'll get a massive square. If you take a picture of a flower, it might look like someone spilled green Kool-Aid all over the place. It's just going to be squares. So the example of this is the photo of a golf ball. The photo was originally the size of about twice this projector, about 6,000 pixels by 4,000, and I compressed it down to 1920 by 1080, but of course since it's on a projector, it's enlarged. And you can see that I focused in on, I actually made this a little bit more speckled in Photoshop because I had the pixels that I could use, and because the projector enlarges the image, you can actually see the individual spots that I added. Now, and remember, this can only be done in Photoshop. So the next piece is Adobe Illustrator. Now this one is, if you're not visual communications, you might not use as much because this is specifically and mostly used for illustrations and logo design. Now the cool thing about this is that it uses scalable imaging, which I'm going to get to in the next slide, and it has and possesses the advanced pen tool. Now yes, Adobe Photoshop does have a pen tool, but it is not as intuitive or as friendly to use. I've had many problems with it. And it also possesses compression and formatting. Now, the wonderful thing about Adobe Illustrator is that it works in vector, which is geometry. Everything that you make in Illustrator is math. There is a mathematical equation for everything that you create in Illustrator. So that means there's no pixels. Yes, your monitor uses pixels, but that's not what the creation is using. So I have this logo down here. I can scale it up to there. There is absolutely no loss of quality. It is the term lossless. So I could take the silly putty and scale it up to the size of the skyscraper, and I'd still have a significant amount of silly putty. So as you can see, here's the comparison of Photoshop versus Illustrator, how much of a difference it actually makes. So this is a logo that I actually made for one of my classes in graphic design. It is the Tread logo. If you have taken the class, you know this assignment very well, and it might bring back some horrifying memories. But I made this logo in Illustrator, and it originally was about this size, and I scaled it up, and you can see how perfectly it slides right through. It also looks perfectly on a print. It fits perfectly to any size that you want to be. Now quickly, when it comes to compression and formatting, yes, there is Photoshop and Illustrator are meant to be used on the web too. Now, if you take a normal project in Illustrator and you save it and you apply it to the web, the AI file will not work on the web. So you are able to, also in Photoshop, turn it into a PNG, which is much significantly smaller, and put it on the web. The next piece is Adobe InDesign. InDesign is probably one of the least common ones to be used, or least known ones to be used, but it is mainly a multi-page system that allows you to create templates and is really known for its advanced word wrapping tool. Now, I would like to say that all three of these programs all have text wrapping, but just like Illustrator has its advanced pen tool, InDesign has its advanced text wrapping. Now, it's not really used for creation. It's really only used for combining Illustrator and Photoshop together. This comes to my next slide. They all love each other. They all work perfectly together. You can drag one thing from the other program, if your computer can handle it, and throw it in. I could take a whole document from Photoshop and throw it into InDesign, and I can basically take a magazine layout and put it onto 20 different pages, no problem, which is wonderful. Now, the one thing that was hard when they developed the Adobe product was, how do you get it to be liked? How do you get all this functionality into one program? Because the original design for Adobe, at least quoted by Krishnan in Management Science, is how do you get one program to do all this at once? And the answer is that you can't. So this is how the Adobe family, or the suite, was pronounced. They took the whole thing and threw it into 3 programs. And they all work perfectly together most of the time. Which is also what Krishnan states, is that most of the time it works. It's still a development in process. And of course, the benefits of having this family is, this is from ASIS, which is a healthcare advancement company. And this is about saying, the Adobe technology platform allows us to quickly release applications that run across multiple operating systems in occasionally connected environments, providing greater resiliency in a mission-critical setting. Having the Adobe Suite at your hand when trying to create anything based on the web or with applications makes it twice as easy, probably even more. Creating an application before the Adobe Suite came out was also unheard of because of the amount of work that was required for it. So now that you have seen the digital age, we are now going to go away into the passage JD on hand style.
Now, I would like to talk to you all about the physical medias and the gradation techniques that correlate with all of them. And, no problem. I wanted it. No. But your hands are your original tools. As a graphic designer, I've started my job a little bit. I've worked with multiple musicians and bands, and as well I have my own art career and a music career. And within it, I've never really been able to work well with computers. And that's why every single one of my teachers has always looked at me and said, why are you wanting to do graphic design then? Because even this year, have been having trouble trying to get into Adobe. I've been taking 2 classes, trying to ease myself into it, not really easing into it though. But I enjoy being able to use my pen. I enjoy the free-flowing and control that I have with my own hand, because I've been studying drawing since I was 4 years old. I've been drawing literally non-stop my entire life. I've just been doodling even during class, like when I'm taking notes. During all of your great speeches, I like to draw a little flower sometimes. So hopefully you guys appreciate it. But on visualartscorp.com, they made a statement that whether such digital or computerized graphic art leads to an enhancement or decline of traditional pen and ink drawing remains unclear. That's very important because it's even been noted in this class that it's a common misconception that art by hand is dying. It actually isn't, and I mean, it's still not clear, but it truly isn't. Because I know very many artists that are still making a lot of money and still doing their job that they love. And, sorry. I'm quitting cigarettes. I started quitting yesterday, and it's been messing me up very bad. Okay, but with that, it has been noted, you said it as well, that it was a dying art, but it really isn't. It's still around, and I'm hoping to try and bring my art into graphic design by hand and bring it back to life and really just give it its own foothold in modern society. As well, Laura Bush wrote in Smashing Magazine that drawing before using Adobe can extend your memory, allow flexibility, and aid in concentration. I would like to begin with pen and ink, which within that, in these mediums are Sharpie, Micron pens, Copic markers, fountain pens, ink wash, all kinds of different things. It really is a very broad statement. But these media include mainly just pen and markers, and there are multiple tips for both. As you can see, it ranges from very, very, very small, which is just for little line work when you're doing your final drawings, to brush tips and chisel tips, which are better for when you want to do work on a canvas or a very large print. And pen is normally used for a classic clean and a refined look, and it allows, when you're drawing, you can transfer it easily into Adobe because the straight line can actually be read just as well. And most of the time, you'll still have to go over it as you did with my Boy Named John logo last year.
Oh man.
That was a fun time.
It was a
lot of
fun
work.
time.
And markers normally will be used for a bolder statement. Say if you wanted to black out an entire area behind your imagery, you'd want to use a Sharpie marker and fill in that black to actually make it a solid contrast. But how can you draw shadows with black pen? Does anyone have any ideas?
You don't?
Exactly. So proud. You don't. You make value. And within value, you use techniques such as stippling, hashing, cross-hashing, smudging. Not so much smudging in ink, but you can if you're using an ink wash. Scribble, loose line, all of it adds texture. And here I have some examples of hashing, which is just straight line usage, and you use it in a closer area to darken it and open it up so that you can add more light to it. Cross-hashing is just using them in separate directions. Loose line is basically just stumbling it all. And stippling is using very calculated dots, and it takes a lot of time. And there's a rose done in stipple. You first start out with a little bit of line and a pencil, and then you continue on with just stippling the entire image. And this is a few of my own works. Not some of my best ones, but a few good ones. Those shoes are still for sale. If anybody likes them, size 9, universal. Had to put it out there. It's on my site. But also then we have graphite, which is pencil, and charcoal. And within that are several, just many different categories for each one. As you can see, pencils, they have even larger than just this scale, but they have varying densities of the graphite, and that changes the tone of the actual color that comes out, as well as same with charcoal. And within it, graphite is the most basic and most capable flexible medium, and they have this scale up in the upper right corner, the H&B scale. And I was going to bring my pencils, but there was no real sense because as an artist I have roughly 300 pencils just sitting on my desk right now, and there would be no sense in just having them all here. But that's the easiest way to describe how the H&B scale changes. And with charcoal you also have charcoal sticks or pencils, and you also have willow sticks, which is basically the remainder of the charcoal all compressed down into another stick that it can get about the same color as the 6B, maybe even possibly an 8B. It's a very dark black, but it allows you to be able to give it a whole lot of tone and value much easier, because it's almost like a powder stick. And within that is gradation, the tonal changes. And for charcoal, you want to use stumps or tortillon stumps. The only difference is with tortillon, it's a cone that's wrapped so that you can peel it off and then have a new stump ready to go. With the regular stumps, however, normally you want to have on hand sandpaper of, depending on whatever value you prefer. I prefer it to be very fine sandpaper, that way it just barely takes off the edge, so I still have black on the stump, so it shades very well. And that's how you can allow yourself to get the dark areas on all of those circles on the top, and actually be able to turn the circles into a sphere using the shading. because gradation allows you to be able to manipulate 3D imagery within your own physical art. And that is some of my own graphite work. And like, say for this one, I used charcoal as all the black edges surrounding everything because I knew it would add contrast outside of just the regular graphite use I use on everything else. As well as the heart on the corner, I used willow sticks on the areas where I really wanted to show kind of like a coming forward value, as well as any areas like the darker corner on the bottom. That's actually all just blacked out, and then I faded it up with the willow stick and the stumps. And these are some other great examples of gradation. Gradation with pen, you can see how it can actually go into it. How he used cross-hatching all around and was able to manipulate it to actually show value throughout the entire face and all the different shadows that are on there. And in pencil, it's actually a lot easier because you have the freedom of actually shading, and you can see how the control of your own hand can actually be unbelievable. It all just takes the training and the desire to just sit there and spend about a month on his eye, probably. I've done that multiple times. So in conclusion, similar to Marissa and Amanda in journalism, there are two sides to graphic design, and mine is the physical media, and Brad's, he works in the computer aspect, which is just as important as mine, but it is known more and is seen more in modern times. And as well, it was mentioned earlier how, again, physical art is dying, but it is a common misconception. It is important to actually keep drawing in your, just as a backup tool. You need to be able to draw everything that you do, just because it allows you to free flow your ideas and get them out all on paper, and be able to then transfer it to the computer. In today's ever-changing technological world, graphic designers must know Adobe and similar programs, so it's just as important to have both as your tools. And broadly, we are the same, but we are on very opposite spectrums, because I can hardly use a computer, but I can draw anything I want.
I can't draw.
Yeah. You guys should see the smiley face he drew. It looks pretty nice, though.
This is my extent of my artwork in general. Like, it's that. That's all it is. It's a smile.
You're drawing me. I can see it.
That's a self-portrait of him.
All right, but that concludes our presentation. Thank you.